I've got this rebuilt carburetor. I rebuilt this carburetor about, I don't know, a couple of years ago. It's been in dry storage since. We're gonna put this carburetor back on this tractor, and we may have to tune it in, dial it in, but it should be already set. We'll get it running and see what it sounds like. And then I'm gonna put a little bit of Marvel mystery oil in with the fuel. I'm just gonna put a gallon or so of fuel in it and get it running, and put some of this in there. That way, since this has been rebuilt and it's been sitting in dry storage, it'll help lubricate the needle in the seat. And we'll put just a little bit of that in there. And I've got a new air cleaner intake hose, some new clamps here, and we're going to get this thing back on. Something to note, that this tractor, you can see, is fairly all original, and you can see the original decals even on the tank up here. There's some original decals on the other side by the oil field. It's been pretty well preserved and taken care of. These are actually, this is the actual original hardware off the carburetor, because I've done several 140s and I've had a few that's had this. That's an internal tooth washer, and that's a real thin, a thin depth hex nut. So that's the original hardware that bolts the carburetor down with the studs there. So just something to note if you're working on an old 140, you notice that. To put the carburetor on, go ahead and take the air cleaner loose or take the bolts out. I've just got them loose right now. It makes it a heck of a lot easier working with it, and it'll go on much easier. Always put my linkages in first, the cotter pins. Previous owner didn't have a cotter pin in the choke linkage, and so of course it's packed full of, the hole's packed full of dirt, so it's going to take just a minute for me to get all of that out of there. You want to make sure that your governor is adjusted properly, your throttle is adjusted properly to the governor. I've already done it, but what you do is you take the pin out right here at the clevis, at the front of the linkage. You hook up your linkage back here at the carburetor. You hold the carburetor studs into the flange here where it goes. Just hold it there and push your throttle linkage all the way back, which would make the butterfly wide open. Okay. And then you set your throttle at the lever at the seat to wide open. So when you push this linkage all the way back toward the rear of the tractor, setting the butterfly wide open, this pin should essentially slide right into place where this clevis is, because both are set to wide open. So if it doesn't, you can back off the lock nut here, the jam nut, and you can adjust the clevis to where it matches. This one's already set perfectly, and we don't need to make any adjustments. So I will warn you, these tractors being as old as they are, this is not moved in a long time. It's usually built up with rust or caked up or whatever. Be very careful with these clevises. You will snap off your linkage rod and have to make a new one or have to purchase a new one. So be careful with that. And I always use new cotter pins whenever I'm putting carburetors back on, because they go in so much easier, and that's what needs to be there. A pick helps out really nicely when you're putting these in, so you don't drop them. Now, all we've got left to do is put the original fuel line back on, pour about a gallon of fuel mixed with some Marvel Mystery Oil, and then we'll run it for a minute. I'll put some more fuel in it, and then I'm going to change the oil, put the hood on, and we're done. We'll be ready to start this tractor up, you know, here shortly, get the fuel in it, the fuel line. But we're real excited to see what it's going to do. All right, so we're ready. We've got the carburetor on the tractor. We're ready to put a little bit of Marvel Mystery Oil and some fuel in it, and see if it's ready to start and see what it'll do. Right now I've got the fuel turned off, and we'll add it as necessary just to make sure I can bleed all the air out of the line. All right, Matthew, are you ready? What? Yep, my tools. Make sure everything's good and tight. We don't have any leaks. Fuel sediment ball's not leaking. Let's go ahead and turn on the fuel. All right, we've got fuel to the carburetor. Let's tighten that down. So it's in neutral. Here we go. Not going to choke it. We'll do about half throttle here. It. Make sure we've got all our wires plugged back in like we did earlier.
Whoa!
Okay. You were not getting any spark, buddy. We're going to have to get some spark going. Don't have any spark. Have to do some more work, won't we?
Yes.
Yep.
Kind of.
Okay, so yesterday we attempted to start the tractor after getting the carburetor on, the fresh fuel and everything in. And I had already filed the points and saw where I took them all the way out and actually hand cleaned them up, filed them, and they looked brand new. Put them back in, noticed I was getting spark, so I let it go. And well, it didn't start yesterday, and I looked and it wasn't, we weren't getting any fire out of the coil. So if you'll look, this one has an ignition coil. It also has this little box on top, what looks like a box. And what that is a resistor, ceramic resistor. It's in a case here. It's a ceramic resistor inside a little metal case. And what that does is it takes the voltage down from the battery to 12 volts, and it reduces those down to this coil, because the coil does not have an internal resistor. You can buy them both ways. So what that is called a ballast resistor, and they were used a lot in Chrysler automobiles and Dodges. And that, so if you ever order one that's a Chrysler style ballast resistor, I've got a test light here. I'm going to touch it positively on the battery to make sure it works. And that it does. So what I'm going to do is, with my ignition switch off, I'm going to touch the first terminal of the resistor that's coming directly off the ignition switch. So this is first point of contact down here for 12 volts. We touch it here, and it shouldn't have any voltage until I turn the ignition switch on. So there's no voltage. We'll turn it on, and you can see, I'm not sure if you can see, but this lights up, and we should have 12 volts right there. And all you do is move to the terminal on the other side where it should be reducing the voltage down. You touch it there and you should have voltage. That should be the positive side of the coil. Let's see, it is. Since this is a negative ground system, you always put the negative or whichever ground orientation the tractor electrical system is to the distributor. So it's negative ground goes to the distributor. So you touch that across there. Getting very little voltage, okay? And if we were to put our test light right here on the distributor and I turn the engine over, this test light should blink as the points open and close. Honestly, I see some smoke coming off of the coil here. It may be some grease that was here before where it's hot, but I'm gonna go ahead and say that's gonna be our problem. And when I go buy one, I'm going to buy a coil that is internally resisted so we can do away with this resistor. So we're going to do that. That resistor right there is smoking hot. So I'm in the coil also. So I'm going to go ahead and say there's our problem. And once I get that replaced, this tractor should crank and it should run. So let's wait and see. All right, Matthew, you ready?
Pop it. Pop it.
All right, you ready?
Pet. Mango.
All right, buddy. So, we've worked on this tractor, haven't we?
Yeah, tools.
Yeah, with our tools. Yeah.
Side.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, with our tools. So, you ready to get it running?
Yeah.
Yeah? You'll see if it'll run? Well, we've changed the carburetor, we've cleaned the gas tank, and we put new ignition points in it and timed the tractor. You ready to try it out?
Race.
You want to race it?
Yeah.
Oh, well, let's see if it'll run. Come on, get up there.
Okay.
Yeah, come on. You got to get up there. Here. Your tools? We may not need any right now.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So we're gonna get this tractor running and see if it'll start up. What we've got here is new carburetor, ignition points. I had to go back and put new points and condenser and rotor button, all that in there, because I found out my insulator for the distributor stud was broken. Out that my insulator stud for the distributor, it was broken, and I got a new insulator, new stud. Everything's factory like it should be. And I went ahead and put new points condenser so nothing's grounded out and everything should work. Like I said, fresh fuel, clean tank, carburetor's been built. Let's try it out and see what happens. All right, Matthew, make sure it's in neutral, okay? Turn on the switch, got a little throttle. Choke is off, let's turn on the fuel. We have a brand new sediment bowl on here.
Bowl.
Yeah.
Bowl.
All right, let's try it out. You ready?
Yeah.
Pull on this rod right here. Can you pull on that? Pull it. Good job, Matthew. We'll need to set the low idle up just a little bit, but you did a good job. All right, that's it. We'll get it back together and take it for a test drive later on. Back on the 140, I've gotten everything done now. I got it all buttoned up, minus putting the lid on the battery box. You may be wondering why I seem to work at night most of the time. It's, well, we've got a 2-year-old and one that's about 3 months old now, and by the time I get home from work, I don't get a break from inside duties until about 7:30, so here we are. But anyway, we'll make it happen. We've got a light out here, and we'll try to be somewhat fast about it. What I'm doing is I'm going to clean this old paint job up. I've got some steel wool with soap in it, just a regular Brillo pad with soap. And I'm just going to go over the sheet metal real lightly, evenly, and clean it with this steel wool. It's Quad Zero. What that'll do, it'll put scratches in it. It's fine. It's just an old lacquer paint job that already has scratches. But what it'll do is it'll just take that top layer that's real dull off, and once we're done, I'm going to put a mixture of I call it just like an oil. It brings out the shine and the depth of the color, and it actually preserves the metal because it's oil based. So let's get this wiped down real good. I may do the fenders, and I may do the dash, and just some little odds and ends there, and especially the sheet metal. And then we'll hose it off and then see what it looks like. See what just that little bit did with that steel wool and soap. And once I get this thing dried off, tomorrow or whenever, we'll wipe it down really good with that special concoction I've got, and then we'll see what she looks like. I think it came out really nice, especially with the original decals there. That's just the gas tank hood and the nose piece. You notice the grill's out of it. Well, I reconditioned the grill. Some people call it a rebuild. I touched it up with a little spray paint, and we cleaned it up and spray painted it the original color, and reinstalled the international emblem. So it actually will make a huge difference and will make the contrasting colors pop. And I'm not really sure if I'm gonna go ahead and rub down the fenders or the dash or anything. You can see it's the primer showing through, and well, the fenders just aren't very visible, and I don't know how much it would matter. So we're probably just going to let it go at the front sheet metal there, and just see how that turns out. So I'm excited to get this one done and back working in the field. Sheet metal's dried down pretty good. You can see there's a little bit of a chalky finish, but we'll take care of that. You could take and get some compound, some light compound, and you could try to buff it, but this paint's pretty thin. So what we're going to do is we're just going to put the old base stuff on it and then wipe it down. I call it Shine Juice. You can see this on Vice Grip Garage on his YouTube channel, as well as some other areas. And I actually heard of this way before him when I first started doing old tractors, and taking boiled linseed oil, and then it's optional, but you can use a little bit of mineral spirits to cut it so it's not as shiny and oily. So I just used 1 part of mineral spirits, 2 parts boiled linseed oil. Just shook it up and I put it in a spray bottle. You could put it in a bucket and brush it on and do whatever, but I'm just going to spray a little bit on. And just take an old rag and start wiping it down. And once all of this sits overnight, once I've wiped it down, I'm going to come back tomorrow morning. I'm going to do the same thing, and that should be good. You don't want to get too much on there, but you want to let it soak in and get enough on there to where you got a good finish. And you can wipe the decals as well. These are really old and dry, so it shouldn't hurt them. It'll put a little shine on them. You can see real quick how that paint really pops, really comes back to life. Tasked by the owner of this tractor to get it running. It had been sitting up over 15 years, and I just wanted to make it look a little better for him. Something he'll be proud of. And there's your Shine Juice. Boiled linseed oil, 2 parts, 1 part mineral spirits. This tractor doesn't have a dent on the sheet metal whatsoever, if you've noticed, which is very, very rare to find. This is a 1964 model, which was the change first year of the sheet metal. Well, mid 63 was, but change of the sheet metal and change over to 12 volt. This one's been changed to alternator, but still the big year for the 140.